This is not to deter you from retiring in the Philippines. The objective of this video is just for people to be able to plan. It's a heads up on what to expect. Because if you know what to expect, you can make a game plan rather than just learning everything one by one on your own. We will talk about everything from World War III to customer service. Let's go. If you're planning to live a discount life in the province, then healthcare should not be your top priority. For example, if your girlfriend is pregnant in the province, and if there are any complications with her pregnancy, you will have to be rushed hours away to the nearest city. Imagine something as simple as a pregnancy complication is not doable in the province. I mean, like, what else are you going to trust them with? Then you get to a tier 2 city, okay? And they can't do things like deal with a heart condition, for example. So then you have to move to a tier 1 city. And the thing is, even in a tier 1 city, if healthcare is your top priority, you should live near the hospital, as close as possible to the hospital in the tier 1 city, because in a tier 1 city, the streets are like parking lots during the day. And even in a tier 1 city, it's still not as likely at the standard of the country you came from. So you can talk about like health insurance all you want, but there is more to it than that. There are regions of the Philippines you can live in where you don't have to worry about natural disasters such as typhoons. But let's say your girlfriend is from the province, okay? And you visit her house, her family, and eventually you fall in love with the area. And now you're in the province. Now you're living in the province. You decided to build a house there. Now you are at the mercy of not only the natural disasters, but after it's over, after the typhoon is done, the neighbors will be asking you for help. So you're also going to have to deal with helping out the neighborhood. Heinz ketchup, Angus beef. The list goes on here, folks. I mean, you can find it in the tier 1 cities, but if you're not in a tier 1 city, you will be walking around the grocery store. You will see local ketchup, which, definitely is not Heinz. That is for sure. You will find beef that a foreigner will say doesn't quite taste the same. And that's fair to say because, a Filipino will be in America and they'll say food here doesn't taste the same. But you will have to get past the idea of eating as well as you did in your home country. The driving in the Philippines is next level greatness. I mean, let's keep this positive. Now, there are a few problems that exist on the road. For me, the number one problem on the road is that the drivers, they just don't care. For example, they're backing out on the street from a parking area. The security guard will help them to back out. So they take up the entire street to back out. Everyone patiently waits for this guy to back out, and he just moves so slowly. You're just sitting there, staring at the guy, backing out, like, dude, come on, let's get this done today. And then he starts driving, and it's so slow. Like, dude, you just kept us waiting as you're backing out, and now you're keeping us behind you like this. I could get into more examples, but this is just to give you an idea. Believe me, if you're driving in the Philippines, you will have your frustrations on the road. For example, you could order a book online on the local Amazon. It's Shopee or Lazada, okay? It will arrive later than if you order the same book on Amazon back in America. I mean, Amazon will literally ship it to the Philippines faster than the local Lazada and Shopee. How is that possible, you ask? Well, nobody knows. It's very puzzling, but welcome to the Philippines. Some things are just unexplainable, but again, that's just a heads up of what to expect if you do decide to retire in the Philippines. Things are slow here, but your package certainly will arrive. They just got a different way of doing things. Some Filipino people I've seen online place an importance on foreigners following the local customs and culture, okay? And the first question I have for these people is like, can you give me an example of local culture? I mean, it's pretty much the same as back home. But 100% of the time, they say, mano. They don't say anything else. So this mano is a very respectful part of the Filipino culture. So let's quickly go over it and then we'll discuss the problemo here, folks. So you meet your girlfriend's parents. You will not shake their hands, folks. When you greet them, you will take their hand and put it in your pocket. No, just kidding. You will take their hand and put it on your forehead. Okay, we're in the Philippines here, folks. It's a sign of respect for an elder Filipino person. Now, where the problemo takes place, folks, is like this, okay? And it happens often. What if you are older than your girlfriend's father? Okay, because you don't mano a younger person, but the father is younger than you, but you should mano the father. So I've never understood this. Maybe a Filipino can chime in the comment section below, and I'll pin that comment. I mean, I know a guy named Jeff Lee Brown, okay, this Australian dude. He's about 60, and his girlfriend's father is 37. Okay, so imagine that. I mean, it's sort of an awkward greeting, wouldn't you say, like mano or no mano? That is the dilemma here, folks. It's tropical here, folks, but honestly, I have to say, it's not that bad. The rainy season is June to December, but it will rain a lot during the rainy season, but not all day, every day, you know? It may just rain hard for 15 minutes, but if you're inside, it really keeps the temperature down. It's really quite nice. Now, in the dry season, it does get sizzling hot, but really, it's only sizzling hot if you're directly in the sun, but as soon as you're in the shade, it cools down tremendously. I was asked before if I built a house, where would I build it? In the mountains or the beach? I said, I'm okay with both, just as long as the trees are providing shade over my house, because I was in Mindanao visiting a friend, and what I noticed was that his house was actually very cool as trees surrounded it. But I walked to another house. It was a 3-minute walk away on the same street, but it did not have trees covering it, and it was sizzling hot inside this house. The two houses were literally on the same street, okay? So just keep in mind, the best way to deal with climate is to have a house that has trees covering it. Prior to having my own bike, I was a slave to public transportation. I mean trikes, buses, vans, and whatever. Man, the public transportation vehicles, they're not maintained very well. They're old. The seats have holes. Sometimes I was just sitting on pure metal. There's no leg room. I mean, if you're a 6-footer, you know, if you are in a trike, you have to deal with the shysters of, you know, like how much to go over there. And they reply with like, how much you want to pay, you know? Then if you're at the bus terminal, they will say, you know, the bus leaves at 10 a.m. Then you sit and wait and it's 10 a.m. and you're still sitting there. And then you realize that 10 a.m. was more of an estimate. The reality is they just leave whenever their seats are full. And then you're on the bus. If you have 1,000 peso note only, the conductor will have a hard time giving you change, which we will talk about soon. In a bus, the aircon could be on full blast, even though it's not necessary. I mean, it can be freezing in those buses. You may have to get out of the bus, but it's so full with people standing in the aisle that you have to squish by everyone to get out. If you have a suitcase in the undercarriage compartment of the bus, you're now paranoid throughout your trip about someone taking your luggage out at one of the stops. I have a bike to get around the Philippines, and I gotta say, I love the freedom. So many people in the Philippines, of course it depends on the specific location, but in Angeles, I'm asked for coins multiple times per day, and you might say, well, who cares? It's 5 pesos. You got to understand how this works, folks. If you give once, you're now a target. It's like in America, you know? Those people who call the lonely elderly for donations. If that elderly person gives this donation, organizations now sell this person's info to another organization. In other words, that elderly person becomes a target. Not a target in a malicious way, but you have to understand, it kind of becomes annoying. I mean, seriously, it's hard to say no sometimes. But I'll tell you what I do. I do give directly to people who I feel in my heart they deserve a bit of help. Because needing it and deserving it, folks, it's two entirely different things. But one tactic I have is I'll buy street food, specifically like in Angeles, they got sliced fruit, which is cold, and they're all over the place. Or I'll buy coconut water, for the electrolytes. And now, if the total is, say, 40 pesos, for just argument's sake, I'll give 100 pesos, okay? And I'll see a person begging, and I'll tell the vendor to give the change to that person. So I'm not giving you the change personally. Anyway, that's it for poverty. Let's move on here, folks. I've had food poisoning. My neighbor has had food poisoning. My friend has had food poisoning. And other foreigners have never had it. Some have never had it until they moved to the Philippines. Just be careful with the food you buy here in the Philippines. I mean, I'm guilty myself of letting my guard down, but one problem is that there are so many flies around wherever food is, like especially meat. And these flies will eat anything, even someone's, throw up on the street from last night, or dog, whatever stuff on the street. But then after the flies eat that crap, those same flies are now eating the meat that you just bought, or the meat the restaurant just bought and is about to serve you, and the bacteria from whatever the flies just ate is now on your food. If you're worried about it, just pay a little extra and buy all your food from the SM Mall. So be careful with food safety. I'm a regular in Starbucks for a tall, hot Americano for 150 pesos. I just find that other coffee shops just don't use the same beans. Coffee beans are really an acquired taste. Anyway, but let's talk customer service here, folks. Starbucks has the best customer service in the Philippines. Not only are they trained well, but they just seem to hire a staff that has a good head on their shoulders. However, most of the customer service in the Philippines, you just want to shake your head. It's like, could you care any less? And not caring basically summarizes everything wrong with customer service in the Philippines. But shout out to the ZRV Breakfast Restaurant in Angeles City for having the world's greatest customer service. I went to this restaurant for breakfast after it was recommended by another YouTuber. Great girls working at the ZRV. I mean, geez, talk about people who really freaking care. And the location of ZRV is not good, but it's very busy, and that's what customer service does. It's free to provide good customer service. It increases your business, and that's kind of the point of having a business, right? You want business to go up, not down. Anyway, expect poor customer service in the Philippines, but do what I do, okay? Reward the restaurants with great customer service with your business, okay? So ZRV in Angeles, shout out to you. And I hope other restaurants learn from you guys. Let's talk about the legal system here. You will always lose, okay, versus a Filipino. Remember one very important thing in the Philippines? The Filipinos are higher than you. And legally, the legal system will always side with the Filipino citizen. One foreigner in Cebu told me this story. He rented a car in Cebu, okay? He drove for 2 minutes and the car died for whatever reason. So he gets a taxi back to the rental company and he asks for another car. But all of them were reserved. So the lady attendant could not give him a new car. Okay, give me my money back, says the foreigner. Sorry, sir, the attendant says. So the foreigner got angry, okay? He got angry, mixed words, and he left. She knows the foreigner's address because, he had to register to get the car. So the foreigner is home and the police show up at the door of the foreigner. Come with us, sir. Foreigner says, come with you where? To the police station. So they go to the police station and the lady attendant at the car rental place is there. The police ask the lady, what do you want to do with him? Note, the police did not even ask the man's version of events. Okay, the lady luckily admitted that the man made some remark while he was angry. She didn't like this remark. She took offense to whatever he said. And she said, she just wants to teach him a lesson, okay? And anyway, he was let go. But remember, it's the Philippines for the Filipinos, Us foreigners, we are nothing but tourists, okay? Very important for those who have never been here to note this, okay? If you retire in the Philippines, humble yourself and keep your ego and attitude in check for your own sake, my friends. As a bike rider myself, I can tell you with 100% certainty that I'm shocked they have an emissions testing system in the Philippines. I mean, I see cars and trucks and buses with so much black smoke coming out of the exhaust that it just trails the vehicle. I mean, it's nauseating. Now, in regard to garbage in general, okay, outside the buildings in my area, people just throw the garbage, not even in the garbage bag. It just piles up until a truck comes and takes it away. But if you are planning to retire in the Philippines, okay, don't expect it to be as sanitary as your home country, okay? Hey, Philippines has its own system that works, okay? It's just not the same, I guarantee, as where you came from, but it does work. Let's move on. You may have kids, okay? Maybe godchildren. Maybe your girlfriend gets pregnant, okay? You may be subject to the education system in the Philippines. Whatever the case may be, you have to deal with educating a child. Now, the public school system in the Philippines is top-notch, folks. No other country is better at teaching karaoke or dance. Now, just remember, private schools in the Philippines will be very useful for your child, godchild, or whatever. They can be a bit pricey, these private schools, at about, it's about 600 USD a month. So you'll have to consider that in regard to your budget. But if you retire in the Philippines, you may get a girl pregnant, okay? So this point regarding the education system may be important to you. In the West, we are big fans of keeping quiet, we like quiet. So we are quiet in order to respect our neighbors. We are quiet, they're quiet, and everyone's happy. However, in the Philippines, they don't care about keeping quiet. Now, I've seen Filipinos literally dance in their house if the neighbors are playing music. Now, here is me thinking what the F, are they doing? Making all that noise. But the Filipinos, they don't care. It doesn't bother them. The Filipinos sing karaoke until 3 a.m. And I guarantee the neighbors are not going to complain. I also guarantee the foreigner will be mumbling to themselves I can't believe they're doing this. But that's what they do. So be prepared for that. But there is an increasing number of barangays or neighborhoods, small cities that are implementing noise laws. And the noise laws work like this. There is no karaoke or loud music after 10 p.m. And personally, I think it's a great idea. I think it makes sense, I think it's something most people can agree with. But if noise is important to you, then keep in mind you may want to live in an area that has noise laws. It's creeping forward, my friends. I mean, seriously, it could happen. Not tomorrow or the next day, but the forces that be are moving in that direction. And obviously, the Philippines will not be the greatest place to live in if and when it does happen. Remember that if it becomes a reality, it will be very hard to leave the country as flights will be limited. It will be 100 people wanting to fly out for every seat that's available. So you could be like me and just decide to stick around and live somewhere that is the least likely to be attacked. For example, anywhere with no airports and no ferry ports and a lot of farmland, okay? An example of a good place to be would be the Bukidnon region of Mindanao or the Canlaon area of Negros. You could also argue an area like Baguio would be a good place to live. However, it is extremely crowded in Baguio. So it might be hard to get accommodations, might be hard to get there in the first place. Even if you are not a social person, it's kind of good to have foreigners around. And that is not to say that there is anything wrong with having Filipinos around. But look at it this way. If a Filipino moves to your country, they themselves feel more comfortable being around other Filipinos. That's a fact. So if you feel better being around other foreigners, there's also nothing wrong with that. But I've met foreigners in the provinces with no foreigner presence. But, actually they're happy. Actually, they are so happy that they don't want foreigners around. They don't want to have friends. They just like to stay home, garden, watch TV, and they're happy doing that all day, every day. But for you who is listening now, keep in mind, if you are the kind of guy who wants at least one friend or a few friends, direct your future move to the Philippines toward Dumaguete or Angeles City, which are two cities that are easy for foreigners to network in. Even in cities with a good amount of expats, it is easy to fall into like an isolation mindset. There is one story I heard of a guy who arrived in Dumaguete, okay? He got his house, furnished it, got a car, got all set up, and after 2 months, he decided it wasn't for him. He wanted to leave. Now, my prognosis for this guy was that he just didn't make himself available to have friends. I think that humans have a social construct, and we are social animals. If we socialize, we are happier than if we are isolated. Now, there are guys like me who just like to socialize, a little bit, and others who need to be around people constantly. So for yourself, keep in mind your level of socializing and plan for that. If you are disabled, you can have a good time rolling around the Philippines, but you will be subjugated to like a distinct area that is modern and secure. For example, like the BGC area of Manila, the IT Park area of Cebu. There are areas in most every tier 1 city that you can live out your life as a handicapped person. But keep in mind, it will be a specific area. You won't have the luxury of saying you're looking for a place in Cebu. You will have to say you're looking for a place in specifically the IT Park of Cebu, for example. But absolutely, being disabled, you can find your retirement in the Philippines. Personally, I have a hard time understanding how it's humanly possible for a city that has multiple levels of government to not have normal sidewalks. I mean, why are sidewalks such a challenge? Anyway, I just wanted to let new retirees to the Philippines know that if you are elderly, you could trip and fall. Personally, I stub my toe constantly on the sidewalks here. But it is, it's admittedly, it's my fault. I should pay closer attention. But hey, just letting people know that, like if a smooth sidewalk is important to you, please live in an area that has smooth sidewalks. And note that it's not the easiest thing to find in the Philippines. Banks in the Philippines are not the same as in your country. Like, for example, to open a bank account is a challenge. I know people that have gone from bank to bank trying to open a bank account. As I've heard, the easiest one to open a bank account with is China Bank, okay? Some people have a problem with the name China Bank, but trust me, it's just a normal bank. It's no less safe than BPI Bank or one of the other bigger banks. Another challenge with banking in the Philippines is that the lineups are very slow. That's the main turnoff with BDO Bank in all of the SM malls, which is the #1 bank in the country, okay? I'm sure it's a great bank, but the problem is that everyone uses BDO or Banco de Oro. So the lineups there are long, and BDO has the most security, which means they are strict with everyone and everything you do. And as I've heard, it's a little nauseating getting set up with them. Now, what you should consider is just not having a local bank account. Keep your money in your home country and send it to the Philippines via Western Union, Remitly, Wise, Zoom. What I do personally to send my money to the Philippines is this. I Western Union my money from Canada to my GCash account, and then I withdraw that money using my GCash card, which will only charge me 18 pesos rather than the 250 pesos if I were to withdraw money at the ATM using my Canadian bank card. I remember being in the Philippines in around the year 2000 or so. I was always in Manila in those days. And kudos to the Philippines then versus now. There was a lot of crime in those earlier days, and there's almost no crime now. But I'll talk about that another time. But what I also remember in those days, 24 years ago, was that there were power outages on a regular basis, even in Manila. Whereas now it's unusual to have power outages. I mean, it's frequent in comparison to where you're from, I'm sure, but very infrequent in compared to 20 years ago. But the thing is, the frequency of power outages is dependent on where you are located. I mean, there are places in the Philippines where you have no running water for 12 hours every day and nearly daily power outages. But I'm in Angeles City right now, which is a big city, and I've been here for 2 weeks. And I have had 2 power outages, but each for a short time and at night, so it didn't affect my day. And each was for about 20 minutes each. Prior to Angeles, I was in Cebu for 3 weeks, and there were also 2 power outages. But the point is, things are improving in that regard. It's something that just doesn't happen probably where you are from, but here it does. But keep in mind that the bigger the city is, the less frequent it will happen. And after the first power outage, you will just get used to, how they are, as it only really happens like once or twice a month for the most part, for a short time each. So it's no biggie. I'm just letting you know to expect it so you're not surprised when it does happen. There's no change. Like when you give them money, they often just don't have change. It happens all the time. It happens every day. Sometimes it's expected. Like a small store, they can't change 1,000 peso note, for example. That's about $20, okay? Okay, so that's okay. I mean, it's a small store, it's a street vendor, whatever. They can't change a big bill. $20 is a big bill here. But I remember one time I was in Cebu going to get a ferry to Ormoc, okay? So the total for my bike was 1,660 pesos, as I remember, to get from Cebu to Ormoc. So I gave 2,000, and the ladyboy attendant inside said she doesn't have change. I'm thinking, like, seriously? You expect me to have like exactly 1,660 pesos? Her reply was, it's my first day on the job. I'm thinking like, well, what difference does that make? Hey, it's the Philippines and things just don't make sense here. Sometimes. Another time I was also in Cebu and I had a buffet in the Robinsons Mall, and the buffet was 360 pesos, I believe. It was for unlimited pasta and salad. Anyway, the food was horrible, like it came from yesterday, but I gave 400 pesos and she said she doesn't have change. I'm thinking like, seriously? Anyways, just letting you know to expect they don't have change. People will stare, and what I mean is like this, okay? If I'm with a girl, the men who are around will just stare as you pass by. For example, one time I was with a girl in Bohol. I'm walking hand in hand with her up the street, okay? We pass a mechanic shop with about 10 men standing just outside the shop, okay? As we pass on the side of the road, which was across the road from where these men were, the men literally followed us with their eyes for like 30 seconds as we passed them. Now, where you're from, you may consider this to be rude, but if you tell a local what happened, they will just say, that's okay. I mean, to them, it's no biggie. They just don't think about it. Things just don't bother Filipinos as they do us foreigners. Again, it's the unexplainable. But if you come to the Philippines to retire, you will notice that the lineups everywhere, whether it's a bank, 7-Eleven, a grocery store, I mean, nobody can explain why the lineups are so long and why the attendants are so slow. I remember one time I was at a grocery store. I was at the cashier. I was paying for my items. Now, she did not know the price of one of my items. So she asked someone, one of the clerk boys, to go check the price. So this boy takes my item and walks to where it was in the store to check the price. But the point is, he just walked. 0 sense of urgency that, people are waiting on him to get the price checked. I mean, the boy didn't care. The cashier didn't care. And also, the thing is, the Filipinos behind me in the lineup, they also didn't seem to care. Like I said before, things don't bother Filipinos like they do us foreigners. So you got to get ready for this. So in that sense, it's just kind of another world here in some respect. Anyway, just one more thing to expect when you decide to retire in the Philippines. Anyway, that is 25 things to consider prior to retiring in the Philippines. Just keep in mind that things don't operate here as they will wherever you're from. Things are slow here, but remember this, the longer you are here, the more you will get used to things. It will even eventually get to the point where you will forget how things were at home. But ultimately, the best way to plan for your retirement is to know exactly what you should plan for. And that's what this video was about. I'll be coming out with a video soon that will help you plan for your retirement in the Philippines. Please subscribe, folks, and I'll see you on the very next video, my friends.